Two.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking with Famous People. I'm Opaloid and I'm here with host Eric. And today, Eric would like to go over the importance and role of the fifth slot. He's had an idea about the fifth slot and how it acts as a scorecard of others, so how you judge others. And also, he's termed it the mulligan of self. So, my first question to Eric is, what does mulligan of self actually mean?
Okay, so that refers to the golf expression that when you take a swing, you're supposed to count on your scorecard. But if you say, oh, that shot didn't count, then you're giving yourself a mulligan, a freebie of sorts. So the idea here is that you judge other people according to this value, and you assume that you are serving that value's interests, even though your mechanism of being tends to run counter to what it would appear to be the mechanism of the value that you're conforming to or
Okay,
not conforming to.
okay, and what's coming to me is in various different frameworks, the fifth has been called the antagonist. It's also become the shadow. I think it's in socionics. It's called the ignoring function. So I think what Eric was just getting at was that um, it's something that you'll judge others, you'll value in others, but at the same time you're ignoring yourself. But it's sort of as though you're implicitly thinking that when you're doing your first, it's actually helping towards your fifth. Is that right?
Right. You assume that your exercise of the first or dominant function serves the values implicit to the fifth function.
Okay, cool. So Eric has created this table, which hopefully is on your screen. Are you sharing your screen at this moment, Eric?
Yeah, well, the only thing that they can see right now is the your fifth slot function, scorecard of others, mulligan of self. As you go down the two types, I'll drag it down to reveal those two types.
Okay, so if you can just drag it down slightly, I'm just going to just orient the viewer to this.
Okay. It's on the
Uh,
first row right now.
Okay, cool. So on the far left corner is the dominant function. So that's the dominant lead first process in all the different types. The next column is the actual type. So yeah, whatever of the 16 types it will be. Then the fifth slot, and as you can see, it's the inverse of the first. Well, you can't see yet, but it is the inverse of the first. The fifth is the inverse attitude of the first. So if it's an introverted process in the first, it'll be an extroverted, and vice versa. And then the last column is about how a person will judge another person based upon their fifth slot. So without further ado, the first types that we're going to be looking at are those that are leading with NE. So that's ENTPs and ENFP. And the fifth slot would be NI. So I'll hand it over to Eric.
Okay, so if you're in any DOM, ENTP, ENFP, then you're going to judge other people by their resonance with truth, as you understand it. Understanding it as resonance with a singular exclusive narratives. So that is to say, I have this truth to explain things and not other truths that are disagreeing with it. Assumes in the self that their own ideational destabilization, that is to say, generation of other possibilities, ultimately serves a bigger truth. Whether that's really true or not is another question. That's why it's kind of a mulligan of the self. It may not be the case that that actually serves that interest, but that's ultimately how the self gives itself a pass on the. That's one of the reasons why it might be called ignoring.
Okay. And I have a question which I wanted to ask you. Pardon me. In the first sentence where it talks about resonance with singular and exclusive narratives, I wanted clarification on narratives. What do you mean by that? Do you mean narrative of the self or more abstract narratives? What does narratives mean?
Well, it's going to be meanings from words, basically. So, for example, if you are a a devout Buddhist, you're going to
Mhm.
have attached to certain kinds of words that say, for example, don't eat animals. It's
Mhm.
a prescription on behavior, but it's also a set of narratives to go along with that prescription as to why it is the case that you ought not eat animals. Why is it the case
Mhm.
that I eat wheat but not animals?
Mhm.
There are going to be words that prescribe the justification or present the justifications for why things ought to be this way or that. For somebody who values truth a lot, either if consciously they're going to be seeking singular answers to things like that as a means of expressing the self. For me, that's unconscious or ignoring. So it's saying I'm judging other people by that, not myself. I'm assuming I'm doing fine on that.
Right. Okay. So what I'm curious of is using the example of a Buddhist, and use the example of ENTP or an ENFP Buddhist. Are they just gonna, if they, if they read Buddhist literature and stuff like that, are they gonna implicitly tend towards an NI understanding of it, even though they're ignoring that? Will they sort of like judge that literature as, oh, this fits the fifth that I'm looking for?
Well, I think that they may end up ideating within the form, so to speak. So it's possible to say that they're less likely to ascribe to a given belief system because of their ideational bounciness, but it's also possible they will ideationally bounce within a frame. So if they ascribe to Buddhism and they'll go, okay, well, I'm going to write a bunch of Zen koans myself. I'm not just going to read the existing ones.
Okay. And what I'm curious of is, the subheading of scorecard of others, so how you're judging others. Is others actually not just an individual, but others as in your relationship to anything other than yourself?
To humanity. So you see that, it's like, on some level, it links into your isolate and security function. I see what's most brutish in life as being that which acts without consideration, that destroys the possibility for further meaning making, and requires a reset of the board and a reset of the meaning making process. That it's a lack of deliberation. That I tend to find that kind of brutishness to be the most natural expression of evil. Well, coordinating with this is the idea that I don't like it when others don't focus on truth. Not focusing on truth means not focusing on meaning legitimization. And since I'm always talking about making new meaning, and I want it legitimized either by my TI or my FI, if you're not willing to engage with me on meaning legitimization grounds, then you're not willing to, and the only way that people are willing to engage on meaning legitimization grounds is if they're working towards mutual meaning legitimization resonance called truth. So on that grounds, and you can do it internally, you can do it externally, but regardless, there's a fun comment to pop up. As an ISTJ, I found your video moronic. Thank you, Joseph Colazzo. Appreciate that. Anyway, so yeah, it's an ideational resonance thing that's implicit. I want people to agree that there's truth, so that in any given moment we can talk about meaning and how it links mutually to something. But I tend to be somewhat adversarial in my meaning making as well. Well, this is wrong, so that there's the one common thread is, well, if we can at least agree there's a truth that we're seeking. If you're just out there doing shit, then you can't even agree to that. Then you're not even meeting sort of my implicit frame for others. If the first function is the implicit frame for the self, the fifth would be the implicit frame for others.
Okay, and there was at my end, there was an audio problem for a little aspect, but I think I pieced it all together. I just wanted to clarify the SI and SE with you as an ENTP, that you were referring to the SE being looked down upon because it limits the NI. Is that right?
Well, I'm saying that that really what it limits is my NE ability. So if you're SE and if you're doing shit, we can't ideate more about it. The decision's been made. The ideation period's over. The doing shit's begun. Right? But another issue about it is the way that one of the reasons it invalidates for me the other that doesn't work from a truth frame in general is because of the way that their action, which is the alternative. Prioritizing SE above NI is the alternative, and it means that they basically say, I reject the whole frame of doing business. I reject your whole economy. I exist outside of it. Okay,
so as I was listening, I just drew this very, very quickly. So ENTP, so NE over here, and then NI, and then SE, and it's as though the NI is sort of like a linchpin or a fulcral point in the psyche. Would you agree? Would you say that it is?
It's the okay. So like the epistemologies, they have a metaphysical component and a physical component. NE doesn't like the SE linked to the physical component on NI. It doesn't like that because that's where the disconnect happens. It says, no, we don't NI to do shit. We NI to do more NI. That's what NE goes. NI is great job, NI. No, don't hang out with SE. Hang out with me. I love you. I just want to make more of you. They want to take you out back behind the woodshed and fuck you in the ass. Don't go with them, but I like him. Oh, come on, NI. You do not want to go with that ESTP. Yes, I do. I'm going to go bend over now.
But what I'm wondering is, and I just filled in the rest of the square, so at the bottom here is, where am I? SI and SE. SI and SE.
Right.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is it actually that the SE over here is detracting from the NI up there, or is it that you don't like the SE because it detracts from the SI?
Well, let's go down the rest of the table. Let's go down the rest of the table. Let's go to the next two types. You want to introduce them? What are they? Let's see. TI. We got your INTP and your ISTP.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So it says there, your fifth slot function of your TI DOM is TE, which means you judge others by their efficacy, the ability of others to realize a logically justified vision as a plan of action. You assume or give yourself credit for the fact that your own logical models are useful if applied properly. You don't have to, you think, well, that's somebody else's job. But of course my things are useful. Are you kidding me? My logical shit is very logical. It's very useful, trust me. Okay, so those are the TI DOMs. You want to go straight down to the next two? And then pause, or you want to stop there?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. No, let's skip to the next one, and then we can do a general thing afterwards. Right. So then the next one is ENFJs and ESFJs who are leading with FE. So they've got FI in the fifth.
Right. So, okay, they think emotional authenticity. They judge others by emotional authenticity, knowing what one truly wants and being guided by that authentic self. That's how they think that if others are, if others meet their implicit frame for others, then they will resonate as emotionally authentic to the FE DOM. And they assume, the FE DOM assumes their own FE management of others is authentic or is an expression of the authentic self. So in both these, you see how it works as both a judgment of others and a mulligan of the self.
Okay, so the next one is SI in ISFJs and ISTJs. So the fifth is SE.
Right, and its impact, seeing the ideation that makes them distinct on an epistemological level, realized in the physical world, assumes their own self is doable. It's basically a bridge to NI. It says, how can I be a character? Well, characters have these things. And so then they have those things in the physical world, and they go, see, I'm this character. That's, you can tell because my house is nice, or because I have this thing with these useful components. I'm a useful guy. I've got all these tools in my car. Or I'm got a lovely home here in Laverne kind of lady, like Kimberly. And, we've got, we don't worry about the fact that rug gets in the way every time you open and close the door. You worry about the fact that it covers up a spot. Which is straight up FE second slot. Kim, why in the world would you put that rug there right by the door? Every time we open the door, it catches on the rug. She says, yeah, but it covers up that spot. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is a bit crazy. My brain was processing as you were speaking. Let's just skip ahead to the next one, and then I'll ask you at the end what was in my mind. So, NI, go for it.
INFJ, INTJ, NE is their fifth slot. That means they seek in others, they validate others by others' ideational openness, the potentiality of ideational action in others, creativity, and it assumes and mulligans their own pattern coalescence by assuming it promotes creativity. That is to say, they may end up reducing and noting off into their own singular vision of things at some point, and not kind of get the way that their way of being doesn't necessarily lend itself ultimately to that, in the same way that all these things are sort of contradictory like that.
Yeah, I get it. I was just going to quickly say, in particular with the which one was it? With the where is it? With the ENFJ and the ESFJ, with the FEFI thing, it applies to all of them. But in particular, when you said the FEFI, so the first FE, fifth FI, the contradiction and the paradox of it became really, really apparent to me, and I'm noticing that's obviously true in all of these with the first and the fifth. Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, how there's that aspect of valuing but ignoring and valuing, and it's just the couplet of them. Sorry.
I like the fact that you highlighted early on in the video the fact that it's called all these different things, because it seems like this explanation accounts for those different names.
Yeah. It's bizarre, and we'll come back to that at the end in the general discussion afterwards. So where were we? We're on.
We just finished NI, so let's go to TE. That's ESTJ, E, and TJ. TI is their fifth. It means they judge others according to logical consistency, justification that passes the muster of the collective. That should say, not the collection. Collective, which is really what TI is. It's other people's justifications. So if FI is your own justifications, TI is other people's justifications. They're saying they want their shit to be justified in ways that pass other people's muster. And it assumes their own efficacy is justified collectively because there's utility, and that justification just needs to be expressed for them. Okay,
so the next one, FI.
The FI, your INFP, ISFP, their fifth law function is FE, and their thing that they judge others on is considerateness, the impacting of the emotion of others in a positive way, the usage thereof to craft the perceptions of others in your favor. That's something they value in others, but they don't recognize that latter part as necessarily part of what's happening. In other words, they see harming the emotions of others as inherently bad, and they judge other people by how considerate they are, basically. And they assume that authenticity on their own part is what other people want. That that other people value authenticity too, basically, and so that their authenticity is consistent with FE all the time, but it's not. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so moving on to SE and ESTPs and ESFPs.
So ESFPs, SI is their fifth, which means sort of self-attainment, the particular story, my particular story. I'm this guy, biggest hero of all time, greatest person, whatever. That kind of stuff, self-attainment, serving the self-animal, self-aggrandizement, realization of the character self as particularly awesome, rather than archetypally awesome. So NI might view oneself as a great example of a given archetype. SI views oneself as, that's because it's me. I'm super badass, and I did this and I did that and I did the other thing. So it judges other people by their self-attainment, okay, and by like how much conqueriness on some level or bigness on some level. If it's an FI thing, it's sort of like how thoroughly a person expresses their authentic feelings to the world is how ESFPs are going to judge people. And which maybe explain why I get a certain amount of ESFPs who like me or identify with me, is they probably see me as authentically expressing my feelings to the world. And I think that the ESTP, they have this sort of authentically applying their logics to the world in a self-interest kind of capacity that that's also very, I'm a badass, I'm a conqueror kind of thing. It's not inherently bad. It does tend to run afoul of my values.
Right. Okay. Okay. But just a question about the SI, because I've wondered whether I'm an SI Dom as opposed to an NI Dom, and I'm wondering self attainment and self aggrandizement and stuff like that. Are NI DOMs likely to puff themselves up? You said, for example, that they may see themselves as the ideal archetype, as opposed to ideal embodied physical self in the now. Is that? Can you clarify what you mean?
Well, if you're an NI Dom, you see yourself as a representation of something that's always been and always will be. It's a pattern that no matter how expressively unique some individual may be, they can never be bigger than their pattern. There's this sort of, and I think it's in that assumption wherein lies the 8th slot insecurity for an NI Dom of knowing the particular self as viable, real, as relevant as the archetypal self. That it's true that to some extent, on a metaphysical level, we will always be expressions of patterns that have come before, because it is the way that meanings are linked to one another. They only tell human stories, and human stories have new expressions, but the people expressing them never stop being human, and the stories they tell never stop being human stories. So there's a finite number of ways to taxonomy those expressions of human existence, and that comprises our archetypal understanding of what it means to be a living sentient being. But we exist as animal selves as well. I also know that it's unique to me that I could go for some corned beef pretty soon or whatever, you know. That's not about any archetype. That's about my animal need for shit. It's true that we can make meaning of it that makes it archetypal, reference universally as an experience that we know has certain kinds of impacts on each of us individually, or we assume it does. But that doesn't change the fact that it's particularist in its experience. And so as an NI Dom, your insecurity function is going to be settling into the process of that experience. Whereas, as for me, my insecurity function is going to be settling into the doing part. Feeling comfortable that I'm going to follow through and do what I say and think I'm going to do, and committing to things and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, whilst I was listening to you, something sort of like popped or clarified in my head. And that thing was... and it's conditional, it's dependent upon what you'll say, but hopefully I've got this right. If the 5th is your ignoring or your antagonist or your shadow, am I right in thinking that the first function, your lead function, so the left-hand column, is actually, it could be labeled as your ego function? Because I wonder whether my confusion is to do with attachment to the first. And when I saw the SI thing there, whether I'm confusing the egotism of like an SI with the self-aggrandizement with just general egotism. So do you think we're all attached to our first in an egoistic or egotistical way? Does that make sense what I'm getting at?
Well, I think...
Because, okay, let me clarify again. You as an ENTP, you're leading with NE. Do you think you self-aggrandize your NE at the in a deferred way contrasted with your other functions? So you self-aggrandize your NE relative to your NI, relative to your SI or SE or whatever other thing? Does that make sense?
I don't know. What I'm saying is, I seek others to aggrandize me, ultimately. But I seek others to define my character and self in the world. I try to actualize externally because it's my 4th slot function. I try to get Kimberly to tell me certain narratives. Like, no, you tell me that you love this about me and that this is nice. And, you know, because it's like I want myself to be defined by confirmation of those narratives and other people via my third slot function.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's coming to me though is, according to the framework that you've come up with, pardon me, if I'm remembering this correctly, you said that the first slot is what you implicitly value. It's your ticket for admission. It's the thing that you do. And in one other video, we talked about how different types will receive criticism. So within that video, you said, like, if somebody criticizes your first slot, you'll just dismiss it or shrug it off or
You'll
something like that.
reframe it. You'll reframe it back to your first slot.
Yeah, you'll reframe it. So if somebody was coming along and say, Eric, you're not any enough, you'll be like, oh yeah? Well, you'll sort of like reframe it and
No, that's
take it as a challenge.
if they hit you with your fifth. So for a perfect example is the other day when you zinged me with an NI thing about Kimberly. You're like, she wants to fight her own fight, Eric, or something like that, right? You brought the NI hammer. I don't remember the exact context of the conversation. But you brought the NI hammer, and what did I do? I just NE'd off of it. I just turned it back into NE. It was like I it failed to acknowledge its primacy in the exchange because there's always more possibilities. It's not over yet. We're going to continue NEing. So I don't feel criticized by it. I didn't feel like it was notable because I could recognize that it was like, ba-boom, nice job. But at the same time, I somehow didn't sort of feel its impactfulness.
Okay, so what you've just described with that whole Kim dialogue thingamajig that's recent, that's if somebody is criticizing your fifth function. But what I'm wondering is if somebody criticizes your first, according to that table about how you take on criticism, what would happen if I came along, if I'm an ENTP and I came along and said, Eric, I can NE you under the table or whatever? Like, how do you take any criticism?
Okay, well, if somebody did that, I'd feel like, okay, well, let's have a contest. For sure, I'd feel competitive. But the thing is, there's a difference between that saying I can outdo you in your dominant function and criticizing it. Like, Eric, the problem here is you're not being creative enough in your thinking, or in general as a person, you lack creativity. You don't come up with enough new ideas. You're too. You brush it off. You just regurgitate other things. It's like somebody coming up and telling you the sun sets in the east. You're not going to argue with them a whole bunch about it. You're just going to be like, no, it doesn't. It sets in the west, and they're going to be like, no, it sets in the east. Okay, you just keep on believing that.
Yeah, and that's what you just said is why I actually brought up this angle to do with criticism. Would you not say that when you just use the sun setting example of sort of like you won't believe it or take it on board because you just think, nah, brush that aside? Yeah, do you not think that there's a egotism which is attached with the position of your first, in that you feel so secure or certain in it that you feel that anything that's directed at it is not warranted because you know that you do it well, you know that you're NEing.
Yeah, I mean, socionics calls your 1-2 functions your ego block, and I think that's a fine enough name for them. In fact, I've often wanted to say that's I don't mind adopting that one block from socionics. First of all, it's not inconsistent with any of the other numbering systems, unlike a lot of their other block shit. So, but regardless, the point is, yeah, you're definitely going to have your sense of self is caught up in your 1-2s. My sense of self is that I do stuff that's ideationally, logically sound or valid or okay, good enough. Right?
Sorry, go on.
And that ultimately I don't really care if you find some little logical inconsistency with it. I'll try to fix it. Hopefully it's not systemic or something. But ultimately I want everybody to go, okay, this is moving closer to the truth. This is more resonant with the truth than other approaches to this. So I want it to be novel, my own expression of self. I'd like others to validate that this is part of me so that it becomes my SI, FE, personal scorecard. But I'm, assuming as I'm doing stuff that I'm working towards truth.
Okay. What I'm wondering is then, like, going back to this table, so the last thing about ESTPs, ESFPs, SI in the fifth, and the whole self-aggrandizement, realization of the character of self is particularly awesome. Are you saying that there's a double egoism or egotism, predicated upon SI in the fifth, and the way you value it will be self-aggrandizement, but you may already self-aggrandize based upon it already being your ego block. Does that make any sense?
Well, it sort of, I think what it assumes is, I think I wrote this, this shouldn't say this. It should say it assumes that this is what they want. It assumes they want to be, they want their own interests served. Assumes they want their own interests served.
Right.
And they don't really necessarily.
Okay.
Just
because that's, I think, in my mind, when I heard the self-aggrandizement, when I heard the sort of like self is awesome, I took it to be some form of egoism, egotism, whatever it might be, and then I confused that or conflated it with the first being the ego, and then sort of like married them together. And I'm like, how is the differentiation between that and this other? I didn't know that socionics calls that the ego block, so that was interesting as well. But I think you understand where I'm coming from, yeah?
No, I'm sorry, I was sort of facing out because I was doing something. Say it again.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's just I wondered whether you understood where my confusion came in from with the self-aggrandizement thingamajig with SI in ESTPs, ESFPs.
Right. It's like if you think about the particular self as being a function of greeds, of needs, greeds, and smoking weeds. It's like you gotta pee, you gotta eat, you gotta sleep, you gotta drink water, you gotta do all these things that are really just for you. And they're not, you know, you have ultimately, after you've attended to all these things for yourself, you have utility to others, sure, but, you know, when I get up and get a bottle of water in the middle of a video because I don't have one and I'm thirsty, instead of sitting here and continuing to make the video, I'm prioritizing SI over something else, right? I'm saying, okay, well, forget the FE implications of this, or forget the interruptional thing, the TE aspects, whether it's going to hurt the video, people are going to leave the video in this, or whatever else. I'm prioritizing my thirst right now. In reality, I have a bottle of water right here, and I'm not thirsty, but it's a good example.
Okay, but where does the I'm awesome bit come into all of that?
Well, so the I'm awesome bit comes into, if you're ignoring SI, you're assuming that your greed, your inherent animal greediness, is what ought drive your action, or that your action is consistent with it, and that you judge others by their consistency with it. So, in other words, an SE DOM is going to validate, depending on what kind of tool function they use, is going to validate others who have conspicuous display of consumptional wealth, for example, who drive a fancy car, or who have conspicuous display of, you might say, expressive wealth. Like an ESFP, I think, would be likely to admire and respect an artist who, like Pink, for example, would be considered an artist that they would respect, in my opinion, because of her expression of her authentic feelings or whatever. And ESTPs would admire people who conquered, who killed it in the business world, who did the thing that makes them hot shit and slayed all the puss and whatever. Obviously this is reductive. I'm not saying ESTPs are all like this at all. And there's a tenderness to ESTPs that often gets greatly underestimated, I think. But you know, this is the thing. We all have these conflicting values that are within us, and I think that we have these reflexive valuing matrices. It doesn't mean we're slaves to them at all, and that's one of the things we often forget about type and typology and all that kind of stuff. Is primarily, in my opinion, if you want a teleological reason to learn this shit, in other words, a reason why it's useful, it's because it frees you from your own reflexive valuing frames and lets you say, okay, maybe I ought to prioritize a different frame in this context.
Yeah, no, that makes sense what you just said. I'm just wondering, like, I'm dragging out the point a bit, or belaboring it. You know, the SCSI then, do you think instead of self-aggrandizement and I'm amazing and everything like that, it should be more along the lines of self-serving and self-validating, as opposed to sort of like self-promoting.
It's there's something imperious about it. But I agree, it's not perfect. These words here. This is not one of the best one. Imperious.
No,
I would say is a fun word there for that. It's not
it's something which doesn't
egalitarian. Imperious. You might call
because as I'm
respectful of external displays of self-expression or self-interest, depending on which type.
Because there's something which doesn't quite just gel up when as I'm listening, but I can't put, I know that there's something which doesn't quite fit with that last, the last description, but I know what you're getting at, but I don't know what the exact right words are for it.
Assumes their actions serve their appetites equals serve their interests. It's a weird. This one's really hard to describe. I probably don't have it down right yet. I'll have to think about it some more. It'll come to me after a while, or maybe Opaloid will come up with it or something. Regardless, most of the rest of the table doesn't seem to cause us a big speed bump like problem. So let's feel good about this part of the table that works fine. Okay, let's just not focus on that part of the table that's not working. Opaloid, come on.
No, sorry. I just wanted to clarify with you because I was getting really confused with sort of like stuff to do with arrogance, conceit, egotism, and everything like that. And then I was like thinking, I'm sure it's not just unique to SEs with SI in the 5th.
I'm displaying my 8th slot bias.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask you some questions, some just general ones about this before we finish off?
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Not at all.
Okay, so with the FE stuff, and also FE in the 1st and FI in the 5th, and FI in the 1st and FE in the 5th, for some reason, those seem the most sort of like to highlight the contradictoriness or the paradox of the 1st and 5th, especially this stuff to do with authenticity and like construction of authenticity or authentic self versus actually being authentic and all of this other stuff. And I wondered, do you think there's parity across the board of all 8, or do you think there are more, 1 or 2 more than others, which really stand out as being like, oh, that's odd? Do you know what I'm getting at?
These ones resonate more as the mechanical symmetry of it resonates more with you? Is that what you're basically getting at?
No, what's happening for me is that it seems as though there's a starkness with FI-FE and FE-FI, contrasted with like NA and NI. You can sort of like, I can understand sort of like how they would fit. I understand the FI-FE as well, but it's as though there's more of a divorcing that occurs, more of a sort of like polarization or starkness between the two.
Do you understand? Are you saying that you can better see the blindness to the ignoring function in FE-FI than you can in the others?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Actually, maybe, perhaps that's one way of looking at it. I think what's coming to me is it seems that there's more of a starkness in the essence or quality of those functions. So, for example, when you were talking about an FE lead who has FI in the 5th, you said something about how an FE will still construct their sense of authenticity, but value FI in others. And likewise, you said an FI will sort of like do their own thing authentically, but then be admiring of or valuing of FE in others. And it seems as though there's more contradiction or starkness or contrast between the functions in that couplet.
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure where you get the more from. I agree. It seems more clear. It like resonates as more obviously so. You can kind of feel the mechanics of it best right there, and I think it's because of the way that we understand FE as being a need of others' displays to represent reasonably well their actualities. In other words, if people's displays don't correlate strongly with their actualities, then that messes up our whole economy, right? So it's therefore people who are successfully pulling fakeries probably doesn't happen a lot to an NIFE person, but if they are pulling fakeries, you will judge them harshly if you're an FE Dom, because you'll say, I can't, you are a bad person. I can't use my nature on you because you're not being authentic enough in your displays.
I think it's just coming to me. What I'm getting at is,
Bye, baby cakes.
I'm excited now about your wedding.
Give me a kiss.
I was super excited before, but enjoy this. Hang it, please.
Okay, I will.
Somewhere cool.
Well, you know he's got this new desk. Did you see that?
Sorry, Lord.
no, it's cool.
This is a regular occurrence around here, guys. Host Eric getting interrupted when talking to Opaloid about stuff by family concerns. You know, someone's throwing macaroni and cheese on the wall again or something like that.
Well, no worries from my end. What I was going to just say is, it just came to me with the FIFE and the FEFI. Yeah, they seem sort of like distinct to the other six, because the other six seem as though they're quite symbiotic. So any in the first with NI in the fifth, and NI in the first with NE in the fifth, seems as though they're like symbiotic pairings that the functions are working together, even though you might be ignoring or whatever it might be, or what's happening in the fifth. There's more of a symbiosis of the action of the lead and the fifth, and likewise for TETI and TITE, and likewise for SISE and SESI. There's more sort of like a cohesion and
I think the symbiosis in FEFI is in the mulligan part. So FE assumes their own other management of others is authentic with their own feelings. Okay, so in other words, FE kind of makes a bargain and says, all assume that making you feel good is what I really want to do, and then FI says, well, all assume that authentically being pleased or displeased by what you present me is what you really want. So it's why FE relationships tend to blow up, because they're, hold on a second. I mean, the thing is, I'm sorry, FIFE relationships tend to blow up, because if you have two of them who are, okay, so I'm assuming my management of you is authentic, right? And I'm judging you by your, if I'm an FE user in the dominant, I guess. If you were to have FE dominant, this is only for FE dom, FI dom. Never mind. Forget that tangent. It wouldn't apply in general.
Yeah, but what's coming to me is, it's actually stuff to do with, the quadras. Yeah, I think sort of like the intuitive sensor divide is a strong divide in the MBTI community. Like, people are aware of that. But I wonder if like FIFE is equally strong, or the second in line as actually being the key sort of like division line amongst the 16 types. For this reason that I'm actually sort of like pointing out. I mean, I can't verbalize it really super accurately, but I get the sense that the FIFE couplet is something which is more strikingly contrasted than like the other functions. And that would, if you imagine the GitHub type square thingamajig, the Falcone thing that do you know what I'm talking about? Well, anyway, the quadras, it's got sort of, it has alpha and beta quadras, so they're sharing the FETI and TIFE. And then it has the gamma and delta, so which have the FITE and TEFI. But there's like a division line, and if you look at sort of like who should end up like with, because of duality and stuff like that, and who you get along best with, they share the axis of like FETI in the first two, so alpha and beta having the FETI, and then FITE being in the other two quadra. And I'm wondering if that is actually there is something more about the FIFE which hasn't been explored or I've not come across or read yet.
Well, I mean,
do you know what I'm getting at? Does
yeah,
it
I
ring a
do,
bell?
but I think it works like this. That basically, you're friends with your own quadra type, plus, a couple of types from the other quadras. So it's like, Alpha Quadra works fine with INFJ, ENFJ, less well with ESTP and ISTP. And Alpha Quadra works fine with INTJ, not so well with ENTJ. The SFPs, we do okay with ISFP, with the quadra with the NFPs, we get along with ENFP and INFP because the NE makes them metaphysically active, whereas we tend to not get along so well with. I mean, we get along. I get along fine with ISTJs. Then there's particular relationships within the quadra too, but ESTJs and ISTJs tend to fit in less well. So in those instances, it's like the NEFI, the NE sort of wins out. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you for a second? So this is this link is the GitHub type square thing. Can you just put it up and share your screen so the viewers know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And can you close the chat window afterwards because
yes.
Yeah, it's just the room. Sorry.
I remembered. I wasn't going to forget to do that. Okay, so now we're looking at just this type square here, and it says here sensors, intuitives, FETI, FITE, and in general, I agree that we get along less well with the FITEs than we do with the FETIs. But I would say that we get along probably less well with the STPs than we do with the NFPs. So I guess I would say I agree with that, except for that switch, by and large.
Okay, and what I'm wondering is, do you think sort of using the GitHub, that type square thing, that's what I'll call it, do you think sort of like there's a snaking pattern like that where you'll go along and then, or
do you think there's a snaking pattern? What do you mean?
It's just when you were describing how you'll get along with so-and-so's types and so-and-so types, but it's as though sort of like it's this, I think ENTPs are they the top right corner?
Yeah.
So looking at that square, would you say that ENTPs will get along with INTPs, ESFJs, ISFJs, get along with INFJs, ENFJs, but less so with the ISTP and ESTP? So if you like tracing it with your finger, it's as though there's a movement like that. And I'm wondering if the ESTP and ISTPs will get along with ESFPs and ISFPs, and then I think
it goes along the outside of it. It's like it's an L, an upside down L. So you go along the top. But for me, ENTP, I get along with everybody that's on my horizontal line and my vertical line. Those are my peeps.
Right.
Okay. So that means I get along with duality, activation, mirror, mirage, contrary, and kindred.
Okay, cool. That was a slight tangent, so I'll bring us back.
Let's try to wrap this thing up here. It's been a fairly long video. I think we covered a lot of good ground.
Okay.
Don't forget, friends, I do offer a professional typing service. If you'd like to do that, you can Facebook message me and pay just $50. It'll give you my PayPal address. You can PayPal me directly. Or you can go to twfpcollectibles.com/services, and you'll see my typing service there for $60 if you want to pay with a major credit card or debit card or whatever.
Okay. And I'd just like to say a few things. The first, just about this video, is please like, share, subscribe, comment, give us your feedback, etc. That's related to this video and TWFP. But on a personal note, I just wanted to put it out there that I'm going to be creating solo content on my own YouTube channel. I've decided to take the leap and see what happens. So I should be creating some content in the next couple of days, which will be on my YouTube channel, which is called Opaloid, just simply Opaloid. If you see me commenting, please click my username and subscribe to me, even though I haven't got any content out there yet. It will be forthcoming very, very quickly. Yeah, and please wish me all the luck. And if you've got any ideas of content that you would like to be covered or whatever, yeah, please suggest it. Either contact me directly or leave it in the comments in one of the videos and I'll see it. Yeah, so I think that's everything. So that was Opaloid. Just plain and simple Opaloid.
That's O-Pa-Lloyd. I'm excited about it. I'm really excited to see you freaking kill it. I'm sure you're going to. And I heartily encourage everybody to subscribe to him and check out his shit. And we'll still see him around here. And maybe he'll have me on a guest on his channel at some point. I don't know. So anyway, we'll still be. We're still friends and everything. You know. We're not breaking up.
I want to just clarify. I'm still going to be doing many collab videos with Eric to come on TwFP and hopefully some on Opaloid as well. But yeah, the time has come for me to see what happens if I go it alone.
Word up.
But yeah, and I want to just say a thanks to Eric for allowing me to actually partake in these videos with him.
Well, thank you, Opaloid, for partaking in them with me, because I've really enjoyed making all these videos, and you know, I think we work great together.
Ditto. I really agree with that. Okay, and on that note, enough of the mutual back patting. Thanks very much.
Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.
Yep. Bye.